the USAM 4 ball, and that's where I could tell you I had a putt on the last hole. It was about a 20 footer, and I was shaking. But I remembered like all this practice that I've done. Just reverted back to the breath. I mean, I couldn't stop myself from shaking, but I knew that it was a very intense moment with a lot of energy. And if I just put my mind or thoughts towards the correct, area, there's a lot of energy going to this right thing. So I just made sure I'm just gonna see this putt go in and just hit it. I can't think of anything else, and I just did.
Today on the Tournament Code, we are interviewing Leo Herrera. Leo won the 2017 AJGA Jim Bell Memorial and the 2019 AJGA Bishopsgate Junior Golf Academy Championship. He was a 2019 Rolex All-American and also a member of the Venezuelan national team. Most recently, Leo won the 2021 United States 4-Ball Championship with Kiko Colio. Did you kind of start playing Florida State Golf Association events starting out, or where did your entry into competitive golf start?
So it all started with first tee. The first 4 tournaments I played, I won, which was a booster for me. It was like felt like okay, this is awesome. Um, so it was first tee, and then I got into U.S. Kids. I mean, those are the good old days. We played, at local events, state events, regional events, and then the World Championship, which is right behind me, Pinehurst. It was one of the most memorable moments of my whole golf career to this day. Just at the age that I was, ton of young kids competing against each other from all over the world. So many kids. Great environment, intense environment, and it really like got me to the next level of competitive golf. And as I started to evolve past the U.S. Kids days, this would be like after I was 12 years old. When I was like 13 to 18, I got into the South Florida PGA League, and the Florida State Golf Association League as well. And then I threw in some AJGA tournaments there when I was 16 to 18 years old, the end of my junior career. And I feel like I did it right. I started off like with the South Florida, like which is a lower league, and I got some wins under my belt, and I started to like just learn how to win. Although it was like an easy field or easier. And then the FJT's Florida Junior Tour, it was good because it was competitive, but it could still like you could still win. It wasn't like you had to shoot so much under par. But then the AJGAs came, and that was just another level of just the whole environment. You could only play 5 a year. All of it was good, but that's kind of how my journey went in junior golf.
Very cool. Jumping back to getting into those AJGAs, etc. It sounds like obviously you've been in the golf world for a good amount of time. But what was the course like that you grew up at, and what was the junior golf there? Did you have a bunch of buddies that you played with there, or was it just you out there grinding?
Well, I got to meet a ton of buddies. I was lucky. I mean, I feel like Florida is like the number one state or number two next to Texas and California for golf. So a lot of good players came from Florida that I played with a lot in the South Florida PGA stuff and the U.S. Kids stuff. So I mean, I had a lot of friends growing up in the FJTs and the AJGAs, and we just got closer in those events. And when I won my first AJGA, or sorry, when I won the second one, I got into the invitationals, which was like, that's like the perk of junior golf. You're getting to play like Liberty National, Greyhawk, PGA National, and so many other nice courses with the best players in the world for junior golf, and it was really fun to be able to be in that environment with such good players and become friends with them as well.
So when you kind of stepped right into AJGA, did you have immediate success, or were you just kind of winning these Florida Junior State Golf Association events and then kind of just going straight into the AJGAs, winning those, or was there a little bit of a
Yeah,
learning curve?
no, there was a learning curve. I think well, the first ever AJGA event that I was in was a qualifier. My dad was. We were like, we have a house up in North Carolina. It's like our vacation home, and we were coming back from there, and tournament was in South Carolina, and it was a qualifier. I needed some stars to get into other events, and he was like, just play this. We're not going to be able to play the tournament, but just play it. And I actually qualified in the first ever try, but I just got the stars. I didn't play in the event. Um, and then my first event was in Texas, and I came in like 20th, which was like I played well. I felt like, but it was like a different competition. I had to shoot a lot better and narrow my misses a little more. And I felt like the first year I didn't really get any any good start or good finishes. Um, and then the second year, I learned what I needed to do to compete out there, and I was able to put myself in the final group 3 times in a row. Um, One was at Die Preserve, which is it's in Jupiter. It was a great course, and the good thing about it was that you didn't have to go crazy low. And those are the types of tournaments that I feel like I strive in, because it's all about like staying mentally in it and making pars, making good saves, keeping it simple. Um, and then the other one was one in South Carolina, uh, and the last one was at Bay Hill, which I eventually won. But the first two, I mean, I completely blew up like in the final group. I was super nervous. I think I shot like 80 and then like 79. Both of the times I finished like bogey, double bogey, to miss out on like the top five. Because the big thing was to get top five, you get fully exempt and then you move on, and like you don't have to worry about stars and all of that and ranking, or ranking, yeah, but not stars. And it was a bummer because I was like, dang, I was so close to just getting. I mean, even if I didn't get the win, that top five would have been nice. But I blew it up. But then the last one at Bay Hill, I ended up winning by 6 shots, which was it was like a huge boost for me doing it on a course like that. That helped my confidence for sure.
So you mentioned that you get into these final groups of these tournaments and you're really nervous. You have a tough time down the stretch. What did you do to try to deal with those nerves the first time you were in that situation? And then what did you do better when you eventually won that tournament to deal with those nerves?
Yeah. So at first I started fighting the nerves. I was like, I don't want to be nervous. Like I shouldn't be nervous. But I mean, eventually I learned that nerves is just a part of the environment, and you have to embrace them in order to perform well under them. Um, I mean, you got to be. This is why you practice. You got to be willing to go out there and feel different. I mean, your body feels different. Your adrenaline's pumping. We can talk about the USM later on, like the four ball, how I was pumping. And it's all about, like literally just letting it flow through your body. But I just felt like in the beginning, I was like restricting it a lot because I felt like being nervous wasn't like a good thing. But I felt like at Bay Hill, when I finally broke through, I mean, I had a comfortable lead coming into the last round. Um, but I told myself I still got to stay like in my mojo. It's a tough course. You can blow up anytime. So it's just about I embraced the nerves and just stuck to the process. The big thing was sticking to each shot. Where instead of like trying to get ahead of myself, like I feel like in the first two events that I blew up, it was just like I was getting ahead of myself. I knew at that point I wasn't gonna win, but I was like I could still get a top five, and I was thinking about like the placing and all that, and it just got in my head, and it finally gets you. Game's always gonna get you. You're never gonna get around it.
That makes sense. In that final round, you said you were staying inside of yourself, staying focused on the process. Was there any sort of mantra you repeated or were thinking as you were going through your pre-shot or throughout the day?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of the breath. I mean, especially in those types of situations. The mantras could change here and there depending on the time situation, but the one thing that does not change is the rhythm of your breath, or at least that's something that I like to really focus on. And it helps me a ton just because I mean you're jittering out there, especially when you got a big putt, either if it's to win or when you're starting off, especially the first two or three holes. Like right off the bat, you're gonna start jittering, and it's like it takes your body at least 30 minutes to get rid of your adrenaline. So it's about controlling the breath and being in your body as much as possible.
Very cool. In particular, the breath part. I do uh, breath work now, just in general. But can you walk us through some of the specifics that you've learned as far as what you're looking for in your breath when you're on the course and getting jittery, and like how you notice it, and then what you do or focus on to get your heart rate back down and get your breath to a better level?
Yeah, so for me, it's all about deep, shallow breaths from your nose. I try not to breathe from my mouth because that's kind of induces like a fight or flight mode. So when you're breathing from your nose, you're breathing a lot deeper. Just being conscious of your breath makes your breath a little deeper. That's definitely the first thing that I'm looking at, and honestly, the only thing because thoughts are gonna come and go. And I like my mantra most of the time is really just not attaching to the thoughts, whether they're good or bad, because I've noticed over my career that like even when things are going well, it's easy to get into those you know thoughts where it's like, "Oh, okay, we're doing good, but then it's like even that is you attaching to something and leaving your body like and getting into your mind. um so using the breath is a vehicle for me to be in my body as much as possible and let go of any type of attachment. So yeah, nasal breathing for me.
That is some deep stuff, and that is some sophisticated stuff, especially how old are you? 21?
20. Yeah.
You're 20. This is stuff, I mean, I'm 26 now, and it took me a long time just to kind of get into this on my own. How did you get exposure to meditation? It sounds like dealing with thoughts and breath work.
Well, it all kind of started in college for me. So my first year in college, I went to UCF, and it was the COVID year. My roommates were from out of the country, and they had to, fly in, and they couldn't in the first semester. So I was by myself in my dorm, and I didn't have any that much work to do honestly from school. School was pretty light, and I really focused on like my own personal growth. Just to at first it was to improve my game. I was like, I want to get my mind straight, get my goals clear, put myself in the right direction. Since all I'm doing is really grinding. Like we just had practice, no tournaments. It was just like kind of a time to grind, and that kind of it all you can only connect the dots backwards, but at that time I didn't really know, but it was leading me towards my own personal growth and just understanding myself a little better. And the vehicles that I used were meditation and breath work, and those kind of things. I mean, like, well, we can get into this where when I was in college, I didn't really have the best time when I was there. I felt like the system that I was a part of was just something I wasn't like necessarily happy with, just with my coach. And I wasn't the only one that thought like this. I mean, like six guys from my team ended up leaving that year as well. um, but I try to like just find something where I could just clear my mind and not let it get to me. And I felt like meditation was the best part that got me pretty clear. And ever since I started it, I've loved it, and because I've seen the benefits it's had for me. And I mean, the best show that I had for that was the USAM four ball, and that's where I could tell you I had a putt on the last hole that was about a 20-footer, and I was shaking. But I remembered like all this practice that I've done just reverted back to the breath. I mean, I couldn't stop myself from shaking, but I knew that it was a very intense moment with a lot of energy. And if I just put my mind or thoughts towards the correct, area, there's a lot of energy going to this right thing. So I just made sure I'm just gonna see this putt go in and just hit it. I can't think of anything else, and I just did.
So you had this really good junior career, and you went on to play a semester or a year at UCF. I'm not sure,
A year.
and a year, and then you play. You moved on and turned pro. Tell us a little bit about how that transition has gone, and has the switch from junior to college to pro golf been kind of what you expected it to be, or different?
Um, so the transition, I left college and I didn't know if I wanted to turn pro, but my coach told me I should because, I'm like, I'm not in college. I should be playing some events and might as well like make some money doing it. Since I'm not really going to be playing college events, which is where it's all in. So I was like, all right, I turned pro. And, the journey, it started by going to the Dominican Republic. I played this tour over there for about 4 months. And it was good because I got to travel, learn how to like, live somewhere else and figure myself out. Um, and I love the Dominican Republic. It was just a good place to like kind of zen out, and, like get my mind together and understand everything. And I didn't really play that well. I also went through a long period of time, about a year, where I had like the wrong equipment for me, and it was kind of an issue. I got like some clubs that were right, but then it was always like a mess for like a year. Um, and then I finally got the right clubs this year in the beginning of the year, and I've been seeing my game progress a lot better. So that was also something that was in the back of my head, whereas like almost golf was like kind of telling me like, focus on the things that you can control right now, and because I mean with COVID everything was backed up, it took forever. So it was like I took that time. I always try to see the silver linings in things, and I took that time to just focus on myself and focus what I can control, and I've been really happy with all the things that I've been doing. I've just been the events haven't been too crazy. I mean, other than the four ball event, that was the only like real big event that I've played. Other than that, it's just been like local stuff or pretty small pro tours.
So let's talk a little bit more about the four ball. You, I was doing some research and I saw you played in the Florida Junior Amateur, and you finished second to Kiko Coleo. And I saw you guys. So you guys, he won the state junior. You finished second, and then you guys teamed up and played in the U.S. four ball together. So just tell us about how that whole process went.
Yeah, I mean, when I played with Kiko, I absolutely loved his character, and I was like, this is just a good kid. And I remember that day, I think I ended up shooting 10 under in that tournament, but he shot like 14. Um, and I shot one under the final round and played good, but he shot like 5 under or something. And I was like, okay, this kid's good. And but I just loved him and his family, and we just hit it off. And then he hit me up. He was like, hey, we should play the four ball together. And I'm like, wow, like we're just gonna destroy. Like this is gonna be a good duo. And I remember in the qualifier, it was pouring, and I was telling Kiko, we love the rain. We love the rain. And like it was like trying to get our head into it because I knew something like I wasn't playing good at all coming into that qualifier. I was playing really, really poor. But then like when I was hit with him and we were together, it was just like something clicked, and I played well. We got in, we won the qualifier, and we just stayed positive through these like really tough conditions, and that's something that's like very important. You just never know what golf or the weather's gonna hit you with, and it's all about staying in your mode. And then in the four ball, I mean, it was just so fun. I got there, it was at Chambers Bay. The second I got there, I was just like, wow, like I'm so happy just to be here. I had no expectations whatsoever of performing well at all. There's a lot of good players. Um, I was just like, hey, let's just have fun. Like this place is amazing. Like I was just in awe of the whole place, and I feel like it was that attitude that allowed us to play so well. We played really well in the stroke play and got into match play. Um, and actually, in the first event or first match, the round of 36, um, I was playing all right in the beginning, but then Kiko kind of carried me throughout the round. Uh, and on 18, we were one down. And Kiko hits his three wood to like 10 feet. It's a par five, and they give it to him. We get to extra holes, and we win on like the third extra hole because those guys three putt. But we were sniffing like losing. Like it did not look pretty the whole time for us at all. Um, but we got that win, and then the rest of the matches we kind of like comfortably won. We were always ahead. And then we faced the number one seed, David Ford and Kelly Chin. Some really good players, some really good junior golfers. Had a lot of respect for them. They won a ton of invitational tournaments in the HAGA days. Uh, and I was like, I knew we really had to step up, and we played really well. I played really well. Kika played really well, and they were kind of coming back. We were two up, and they came back. On 16, they won it. David birdied, and then 17, Kelly. It's like I forgot how far it was, but it's a 4-iron par three, pretty narrow green. Kelly hits it to like 6 feet. David hits it to like 5 feet. Kiko misses the green, and I step up and I hit the best shot, one of the best shots of my life, to like a foot, and they gave it to me. We won the match, and I remember getting an interview after that, and I was like, yeah, I think we're gonna win this. Like it's like we just beat the number one seed. I felt really good about our game, and just like everything about the week was just like going our way. And the next match was against two kids from Notre Dame. And I think Palmer Jackson and Davis Chatfield, good players, both seniors at Notre Dame, and that was like my best day out there. I think it was like 7 under through 14, and they were just like kind of like, all right, like they couldn't do anything about it really. It was a really good day for me. I just kind of had a good day. We won that one, and then the final match was intense, man. That one was like, it almost had like the least energy in it in the beginning though. I felt like, we'd played a ton of golf. We were kind of worn out. Beginning was just kind of a lot of pars, a couple birdies. We were down a little bit in the beginning, and then we got it back together where we were all square. We got to 2 up, with 4 to play, and I almost felt like we put our guard down a little bit there, and the other kids started he made a huge putt on 15 for birdie, and then another one on 17, and we're on 18 all tied up, and I mean this is what you live for. It's like one of the best moments, and one of the guy who made the 2 birdies hits driver off the deck toward like the front of the green, and I'm like, okay, like we got to make birdie really, and he hits his chip. It's a 50-yard chip. It hits the center of the flagstick, and it 360 lips out to like 6 inches. And I'm standing right next to the hole, and I'm like, wow, like this is our chance. I could have easily thought, like, okay, like they want this. Like I had like a 20-footer for birdie or 15-footer for birdie. Kiko had like a 20-footer. But it was like, I felt like it was that mindset that I took into that putt that really allowed me to like make it. Because the second he hit it, and I saw it lip out, I was just like, all right, this is my chance to go in. And I stepped up. Kiko gave me a good read, and I blacked out and made it. And I remember going into the porta potty right after that and trying to catch my breath. I was like, geez, like you're so pumped up. And we go to the first hole, and I guess I'm like, I still got to play. And I hit my drive. Usually that's a par 5. I hit 2-iron, a 3-wood into the green. And that time I hit 5-iron into the green. I was like super juiced. Like the ball just goes way further, just in another world. And one of the other guy just ended up missing like a 4 footer to tie us there, and we won it. It was just a great experience.
You know, you're growing up in Florida on a certain type of grass, certain type of golf courses, and you go all the way out to Chambers Bay, which kind of had famously bad greens in the U.S. Open. Was there an adjustment to playing on that type of grass growing up in Florida?
Well, the greens were they actually redid them when I was there, so they were not that bad,
Okay.
but they were definitely different. They were super undulated. You just have to be very creative out there. You can hit a certain shot like 20 different ways. I remember hitting a few chip shots where I was like, I hit it like 20 yards by the hole and take the ridge, and it's coming back to you. Like there's a lot of it's a roller coaster course. I like to call it. But it was fun. I took the attitude of just enjoying the experience, and it brought out some good stuff, which is nice.
Taking that, uh, adjusting to Chambers Bay is one thing, but when you travel throughout the country playing on tournaments, especially when it's younger, switching grasses can be, I know, kind of weird for Cooper and I. We grew up in kind of the Midwest and the north part of the South where there's a lot of bent grass. So I can remember coming down to Georgia, especially playing on Bermuda, not that nice of courses, and it was a different experience. What do you think of, or is there anything that you think of when you're traveling around and playing on different types of grass?
Yeah, it's just very important to do your research as to like how the grass is going to react, and everything. Really, that's about it. I mean, Bermuda, it's a lot more grainy, and bent's less grainy. Those are the two main ones I've played in. I don't think I've really played in much different. Um, for me, it's really about the greens. That's the big difference. Like with bent, I've seemed to struggle with like over my career so far, just like over reading the greens because I'm used to the grain kind of taking it a little more than normal. Um, and the bent grass it just breaks a little less. But I think I would just say do your research as to like what the grass is supposed to do, and test it out when you're doing your practice rounds.
Speaking of practice rounds, something that we've been trying to ask all our guests is how do you approach practice rounds? I know this is something that, you know, college players, amateurs, juniors, and even pros struggle with is how to approach a practice round.
Yeah, so for practice rounds, I really just like to look at what clubs am I taking off the tee, um, where can the pins be, and one big thing is like I see a lot of junior golfers like playing out their ball in practice rounds, like to making it to the hole. But I've always been taught at a young age to like, once you hit it onto the green, like pick it up. You're not the pin's probably not gonna be there for the tournament. Go and like feel the green. And you got to be very observant on practice rounds. I mean, I this is something I actually want to do in the near future is play a practice round without hitting a shot, where I'm just like looking at the course and seeing everything because that's what you really want to do in a practice round. Like, yeah, you want to hit the shots and all that, but if you want to go practice, just go to the range and do that. But I mean, know the numbers. You know exactly where the percentage play is off the tee, especially, and know where you can and cannot miss on the greens. And I would say just feel the greens. I mean, hit putts around everywhere, feel the speed, and yeah, and understand kind of where the wind is coming uh, during the practice round, and see if it's going to be a similar wind. Because a big thing is checking the wind for the whole week, because it could be into the wind today in the practice round, but then tomorrow it's downwind, so it's a completely different club off the tee. So you just have to take those things into consideration. And I make sure I always write the wind because that's what's influenced me to pick that club off the tee in that particular moment. So it's very important.
Interesting. I have two questions from that. One, you talk about uh, making the percentage play off the tee and knowing where to miss as far as the green goes. Is there a strategy that you use to help make those determinations, or what do you filter through for that?
Well, I like to see in college we use Decade, which is an app. It's like a cone. It measures your range of miss with a certain club. The longer the club, the wider the miss. So I mean, you try to like create your field goal with whatever club you have, and see, is this gonna put me in a bad spot if I miss it? If it is, then it's probably not the right club. We could take a less club, narrow the cone a little bit, and put ourselves in position. And it's very important to understand that you don't need to have wedges into every hole. Like putting yourself in a par four, just throwing an iron. And this is one thing I did a lot in junior golf because I could not hit my driver straight at all. And I just had the hooks a lot when I was growing up. Um, Drivers a lot better now, thankfully. But and I used a lot of irons off the tee, and I was like, anything inside 400 yards, I didn't even consider it. I was like, I'm just gonna hit an iron, a 2 iron. I love my 2 iron, um, and it did pretty well for me. Like I was able to position my ball pretty well, and in those tournaments where you didn't have to go crazy low, I was able to do very well because I was always in play and playing, you know, to my strength, which has always been my iron game.
Interesting. And on top of that, the second question I had is you talked about getting the win position for the week and the win position for the day. And so a lot of how I've done that when I caddy is, you get on the Weather Channel app, see where the wind's coming out of. You have your yardage book, which has the compass on it. And so you note, hey, here's where the wind's coming from. And so throughout the day, for the most part, how we would do it is we would just play, even if we weren't feeling that much necessarily, we would play whatever we thought the prevailing wind was for that day and adjust to that. Is that A, is that what you do? And B, if that is what you do and you're out there on the course and you feel like a weird gust, how do you figure out, okay, is this a real change in the wind or am I just feeling some sort of wind pattern that happens because of how these trees are?
Yeah, A, yes, I do, and B, I've noticed that gusts they kind of like go away after if you just wait them out. They just wait like 20 seconds or something. If you're really like confused about like, okay, this is not the ordinary wind pattern that it should be today, so just wait it out. And if it's still going that way, then maybe the wind just changed. But I would always say give it like 15 to 20 seconds to just double check, because it could just be something that's trying to fool you.
Do you have a strategy for nutrition when you play in golf tournaments?
Um, so I do. It's very simple, honestly. I don't like to eat too much when I'm out there, and that's something that a lot of people would probably be like, let's find out it's normal. Um, but I've been diving into this nutritional aspect for a long time, and there's so many lies that we've been told about food. It's absolutely crazy. Number one, like focus on the like you got to focus on the priorities of your body, which is number one, the breath. Number two, it's hydration. Number three, it's sleep. Then it's food. But I mean, you got to get a good night's sleep. Very important. Um, you got to make sure you're staying hydrated, and hydration happens before the tournament. Like it's not a thing you do during. Like you got to be, well hydrated before coming in. Um, and I don't know. Do a lot of research on breathing and stuff that can energize, because breath can turn into energy for you. Like it's your number one source of energy. Uh, and being mindful of that. I've done a lot of rounds actually where I'm like in a fasted state for a long time, and I've noticed that like my brain waves slow down. Like I've actually noticed it. And you're just like in another level of thinking, and you don't want to like have extra stimuli during the rounds. You obviously want to have your mind as clear as possible. So to me, it just depends on what you're doing with your body and what you're eating already. I like to eat like pretty clean, and I don't really have too many cravings for food, I would say. And that's something I had to train out of me, because back in my junior days, I had to eat a lot during the rounds because I was just used to eating a lot. But that's been one of the breakthroughs that I've kind of been discovering. And best thing for me is nothing. Yeah.
Interesting. In hand with nutrition, do you have uh, a workout regime that you do or a trainer that you work with on that front at all?
Yeah, I used to work with, well, we had the training at college. I've taken some workouts from that. I had a trainer that was specific for like mobility stuff and some speed. I did that for like 3 months. I've taken some of that. I've been trying to create my own kind of approach towards it. And so far, I do a lot of strength training um, with weights and stuff to try to just build some muscle mass and a lot of core centric stuff because that's very important for balance and speed to have core awareness. So that's been my focus, and flexibility, mobility is huge too.
Interesting. And on top of that, I know you work on your website. It says you work with Nelson Mesa as your swing coach and club fitter. I want to jump back. You'd said something earlier that piqued my interest, and I want to jump back to that, which was talking about how for a while you were in the wrong clubs. Uh, Tell us what the issue was in particular for you, how you noticed it, and what the change was. Because a lot of times we grow up, and at least I'll tell you what my mom used to tell me. I had an old pair of Callaway Big Bertha irons at one point, uh, and my mom was like, "Tiger Woods could break par with those. You don't need anything new." So I'm sure a lot of kids are conditioned to hearing something like that, and that's in some cases that may be true or not true. But those small feels that come with new equipment or different equipment that changes ball flight and how your body reacts to the weight of the club, etc., matter. I know. Tell us about that issue and how you noticed it and what you did to change it.
Yeah, I mean, I took the approach that your mom told you for a while, and that's why I had this problem for too long. And I won the four ball with those clubs. And when I decided to turn pro, I was able to contacted somebody from TaylorMade. Uh, he's the distributor for TaylorMade around the Dominican Republic, and I texted him. He's a family friend. I'm like, hey, can I get some discounts from like for clubs and stuff? Because TaylorMade kind of like dropped me, I would say, when I turned pro. They said they just needed to see like good performance when I played, which was all right. And he kind of came to me with like, I'll give you free clubs and I'll be your manager. Like I want to be a part of your team. So it was like complete flip of the switch. Um, but we went out and actually I played like a minor league event with him, and he was caddying for me, and he knows about clubs and stuff, and he tells me like the heads that I had at that time, which were the P like 770s, they had way too much offset, and I was missing the ball left a lot, which offset does that for those of you who don't know. Um, so I was like, okay, I got to switch the heads. I switched the heads, and then it turned out that I was using the wrong shafts, and I got them like they were too short at first, so I got them longer, and then this other guy tells me, uh, like, oh no, you got to get them like you got to get other shafts that are a little like lighter because these were like way too heavy. Like I was using Project X 7.0s. They were weighing like 135 grams. Like these shafts were like telephone poles. Like it was not a shaft. And um, from there, I switched to other shafts that were like 115s. They were fine, and but I had cut them back to standard length for some reason. Some guy told me that I should do that. Um, and then I find Nelly, he's out here at True Spec at Doral, and he told me, hey, like we got to do this right, bro. Like you really have to do this right. Like you're a good player. You got to invest in yourself the correct way. Um, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. And he's a club fitter, but then he was telling me a few things like that I really liked the way he was telling me, and I was like, I wanted to work with him. So I started working with him, and I felt like a lot more secure working with him, like because a big problem over my like that career had been my clubs. So I was like, I feel like I finally have someone that I can rely on constantly. He's my coach and my club fitter, um, and but it just the whole process took forever. I mean, it just like so many of the things were delayed and stuff like that. But the one thing that I learned is you got to pick somebody and then listen to them. I the mistake that I made is I started listening to too many people. I got different opinions from like three or four people, and just kind of, first of all, like I didn't even know anything about my clubs being wrong until somebody told me, and then somebody that like was like, hey, like I think you could perform better with other clubs, and it all of a sudden like kind of gets in your head. And it's like, oh, I don't really have the right clubs, and then that energy starts to build up, and um, then you're in a quest to find something that is now a problem that you never knew was a problem. It's better to not even know it. But I'm happy I knew about it because it is something that really matters, and now I'm really happy with the clubs that I have, and I feel good about my game.
So now that you have a good setup of clubs, do you have kind of like a rotation of certain tee shot clubs that you switch out, or you stay with the same setup every week?
I have right now I have 15 clubs, so I switch off from either my 3 iron, 2 iron, or 3 wood, depending on the course. Um, if the course is pretty short, I like keeping the 3 iron in and taking the 3 wood out. I played a long time in my junior career without a 3 wood, probably like 2 years. I was never a wood guy. I always loved the long irons or driving irons. But yeah, those are the clubs I switch off. Just depends on the type of course.
So sometimes you'll play with a 2 iron and 3 wood, and then pull that 3 iron out, so you have a gap in between the 2 and 4.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. That's something that I was talking with a buddy of ours who's on Corn Ferry the other day, and he was having the same thing, except it was 3 and 4 iron. So he was going to leave 3 iron in the bag and pull out 4 iron. Now that you've kind of developed that sophistication to know, hey, I really don't need my 3 iron in the bag for this 230 shot. I can hit my 2 iron in most situations where I'm hitting it. It's not necessarily like I'm doing surgery, so it's okay to be hitting that 2 iron. As far as that goes, is that something you wish you would have learned when you were younger and maybe played with the bag a little more, as far as understanding how to rotate those clubs in and out depending on the course you're going to play?
Um, I just when I was growing up, I just every time I got a 3 wood, I would hit it terrible, and it's just like something I was like, I don't want to touch a wood, and it took me until I actually found a wood, and that was the first ever wood that I got in my hand, and I was like, oh, this feels good. It was like the Sim 2, or the Sim 3 wood, and I was like, okay, this is like I'm hitting it pretty good. I also like improved a few things in my swing that allowed me to hit the 3 wood better. Um, and now I have the Stealth 3 wood, and I love it. Like it's a really good club. And the reason I wanted to put it in too is because there's a lot of par fives where it's like you want to go for it in two, but it's just outside that 2 iron range, and I don't like really trying to smoke a 2 iron because that's when it starts to get a little, the contact gets off and all that. So having a 3 wood has been a lot really helpful. And I honestly put in a 3 wood in just if I can reach a par five that I can't reach with a 2 iron, and for that particular course, that would be something like 260, and like it's a good number to go for it. But I would never be able to go for it with a 2 iron.
Earlier, you were talking about how the strength of your game is your iron play. What do you think has allowed you to become such a good iron player throughout your career?
Um, well, I would say iron play and putting mainly. I would say iron play because I'm good at really picking lines, and that's what the most important thing is. Like, I mean, when you get to this point of, or my point of my career right now, where it's like the ball striking is really never uh going to be too big of an issue. If anything, it's going to be a little off here and there. It's all about knowing how to pick your lines to hit greens, and uh with par threes, like playing a center of green, like hitting just stock shots, and I just love practicing my irons. But I would say, once you just find your rhythm, and find your swing, it's just all about picking the right lines and executing on them. And I've been able to, I feel like, do that pretty well, which has helped me strategize my way around the course. And with putting, it's just been always something I've loved. and I've been pretty good at. Just had a lot of putts growing up. This is what I was talking about. Where I mean, when I was growing up in junior golf, where I won a lot of tournaments, it was because like, well, I had a lot of putts that I needed to make. I mean, a ton of playoffs and these little small local tours, but it all came down to making the putt, and it's always been something that I can rely on.
So would you say that as far as, picking your lines with your irons and that's allowed you to become such a good iron player, is that something that you were kind of just intuitively figured out as a junior golfer, or did you have some coaching or experiences that led you to, pick better lines with your approach shots?
Um, I would say in the beginning I was very aggressive with my iron play, and I kind of learned it myself. Whereas like you kind of learn that like there's certain times where you just don't go for certain things. And uh, growing up, I was very competitive, and I wanted to put it as close as possible. But then I would say transitioning from uh, the regular AJGAs to the invitationals taught me a lot, because it was like I started to play like high end golf courses that your misses were going to be exposed, and I learned a lot that in order for me to like stay in it and compete, I have to start picking the right lines, and just reading books and stuff about it. And I would say in college, my coach was huge on strategy, on course management. Um, so that in college, it kind of solidified it for me, I would say, because I was still seeing some tendencies on my game and getting a little too aggressive where I thought I could, but statistically, and he had the stats. This guy has like a huge book of stats, and it just it taught me what I needed to do.
I'm kind of curious. Do you remember any of those books that you did read that helped you with your strategy?
Um, I mean, the only book honestly that I read about golf is Zen Golf. I think it's the best book for golf, and it's just like it's not really about strategy, but it makes you find your strategy, because I mean, everybody has their own game. It helps you really understand how to approach the mental side of golf to keep things simple. And one of the things keeping simple is, picking good lines, not being overly aggressive or overly emotional in certain shots. That's one thing I learned, and applying those skills from that book to my game, I was able to that's how I was able to find out how to do it myself, really.
How do you, when you're taking these um, lines where you know that you're playing on these courses that require you to take a lot more shots at the center of the green and away from the pin, you know you're going to end up with longer putts to degree. It also means you're not going to be short side as much, etc. But how do you make sure that you stay patient through that, knowing that, hey, you might hit a good shot and you might be left with a 30 footer or 40 footer, depending on green layout, how you hit the shot, etc. Um,
Yeah, so I learned a lot from caddying for my friend at Q School for Corn Ferry Tour. We were out there caddying. We were talking about strategy. He's a good player, and uh, he just told me, "Hey, like all I want you to tell me this week is like play for the center of the green on every par three. I don't care what the number is." He would literally tell me like, "I don't want to know the number to the flag. Don't even measure it. Like we have the number to the middle of the green. We're going to that." Because he's 30 years old. He's played golf long enough where he knows that if you shoot even on par threes, you're gaining shots on the field. And there it was just like very clear to me, especially on par threes, where it's like there's no need to go for the flag. Just put it in play in the center of the green. Maybe make a putt, maybe not, but stress-free pars on par threes is the way to go. But my biggest struggle was par fives, actually. I would be they're too aggressive on par fives, and keep myself short sided. And he told me like to kind of just try out like laying up on every par five for like a little bit. And I noticed that, there's a time and place to go for it and not. It's about finding that mix. But when you are going to go for it, really understanding the risk reward, and, you know, seeing how your body feels and seeing where you should be leaving it for the next shot. because like it's golf is about the next shot. Like it's about where are you going to play the next one from, and because continuing to hit shots.
Jumping ahead, kind of um, thinking about the next shot, and uh, that when you finish up a round, you've hit all the shots for a round, you go back to your hotel or wherever. How do you determine whether the tournament was a success, or what are you evaluating afterwards besides just how you finished in the tournament? Because you play golf against a bunch of guys. You said you're playing against Kiki, and came out there and shot 5 under that last day, and sometimes that's just how it goes, and you played good golf to do it. How do you determine what's a success?
Um, well, first you have to understand what you can control, and you can only control like you and your process. So one thing that's very big on me is like, being clear as to like what I want my process to be, and that can change for a different shot. Like for example, my process is different with my driver than it is with my putting, but knowing what my process is and only focusing on that. And there's one thing that I like from that book that I read, is like changing your definition of making putts. Whereas like there's a difference between making a putt and holding a putt. And making a putt, it is about, you see your line and you go through your routine, you keep your head down, like you do what you can control. Like to me, that's making a putt, whether it went in or not. Um, and that's taking that approach with the whole part of the game where it's like, yeah, just focus on what you can control, your process. And if you did that, I like kind of tallying like when I didn't or did stick to my process, and then that's what I assess after the round. And you can tell that when you're sticking to your process fully, like most of the time you're gonna perform pretty well. And when you don't, it's like, oh, there I had like a couple of thoughts there that kind of like, it got me out of my focus, and it affected the outcome.
Very cool. So uh, we're getting close to end of time, and one question we ask at the end of every episode um, is: now you're older, you know a lot more about golf, and ostensibly, like if you went back to yourself when you're younger, you should be able to give yourself a piece of advice to help yourself get better. If you could do that and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Practice emotional maturity, because I mean, life and golf is going to throw you with so many things that it's going to trigger your emotions. It's going to make you understand, but your emotions like help you understand yourself instead of acting on them, kind of like, heeding the intelligence of the emotions, I would say. And that would help me a lot more in my junior career, and it's helped me so far, and I'm continuing to do that. It's not an easy thing to do because emotions are strong. um, so yeah, that's what I would tell myself.
That is incredibly mature and something we all could definitely could learn from. I know that you have a podcast, uh, among other things. Where can people reach you, find you, learn more about you and what you're about?
Yeah, so follow my podcast on YouTube. It's called Fade the Public Podcast. On Instagram, I post some Instagram reels, Fade the Public underscore podcast or pod. Um, and yeah, just follow me on Instagram at leo.herrera0719. And I just started this golf YouTube channel with me and one of my boys. It's called Fade the Public Golf.
Thanks for joining us today. Please do us a big favor and like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts so we can help others learn how to play better tournament golf. You can find us online at thetournamentcode.com, on Instagram at thetournamentcode, and on Twitter at tournamentcode. As always, feel free to reach out to us at those places or email us at daniel@thetournamentcode.com and cooper@thetournamentcode.com. We hope you join us as we continue to dive deeper into what it takes to play elite tournament golf.